Ladies and gentlemen, there is something inherently uncomfortable about being betrayed. It's like a wound that refuses to heal, an injury to your trust, your psyche, and your sense of self. And the instinct when we're hurt by someone is to retreat, to close off, to lash out, or to pretend it didn't matter. But I urge you to face that discomfort head on, because the truth lies in the discomfort. You see, betrayal, cheating, and hurt, they don't come from nowhere. There's always a reason. And if you can understand those reasons, you can grow. You can move beyond the pain. So what are these reasons? What drives people to hurt us, to cheat, to lie, to break trust? It's simpler than we often think, and yet the answers are profound. Allow me to break them down for you. There are 5 core reasons. People often hurt others because of their own insecurities, a deep fear of not being enough. At the heart of this insecurity is a sense of inadequacy, where an individual feels like they are not worthy of love, success, or fulfillment. This lack of self-worth creates a void in their life that they desperately try to fill, often in unhealthy ways. Rather than confronting their feelings of inadequacy and working to improve themselves, they may seek external validation to mask their inner turmoil. This search for validation might manifest in ways that betray the trust of those around them. When someone is insecure, they are often highly sensitive to criticism or perceived rejection. This sensitivity can lead to defensive behavior, which may include lying, cheating, or manipulating others to feel better about themselves. The root of this behavior isn't malice. It's a desperate attempt to shield themselves from the discomfort of feeling inadequate. In this sense, betrayal is a reflection of their inner struggle, not a deliberate attempt to harm someone else. They might cheat because, in their warped view, it's a way to prove their attractiveness, worth, or desirability. By seeking attention or affection from someone else, they temporarily feel validated, as if their existence holds value. But this fleeting validation is ultimately hollow because it is built on lies, not self-acceptance. The pain caused by this type of behavior can be profound, especially when the individual betrays a loved one. The person who is betrayed may feel that their worth is being questioned, that they are not enough to keep the person loyal or committed. The irony, however, is that the person who cheats or betrays is acting from a place of deep internal fear. They don't feel enough themselves, so they try to compensate by seeking external affirmation. So the tragedy is that this cycle of insecurity only deepens their own sense of failure. In the end, insecurity is not just about lacking confidence or self-esteem. It's a pervasive fear that impacts how someone interacts with the world and the people they care about. This fear pushes them to act out in ways that may hurt others. To truly heal, the person must first acknowledge their insecurities and begin working on self-acceptance. Until that happens, their relationships will continue to suffer as they seek to fill the emptiness within with external sources of validation that can never truly heal the wound. A lack of self-discipline can drive individuals to hurt others, often through impulsive and reckless actions. In today's world, we are constantly surrounded by temptations and instant gratification, making it increasingly difficult to delay our desires or consider the long-term consequences of our actions. People who struggle with self-discipline often find themselves acting on impulse, choosing short-term pleasure over long-term commitment, responsibility, or the well-being of those they care about. This can manifest in various ways, including cheating, lying, or betraying the trust of others. The inability to delay gratification comes from a failure to prioritize the future, a tendency to focus on what feels good right now, rather than considering the broader impact of one's actions. When someone is caught up in the immediate gratification of a situation, they may fail to recognize the harm they are causing. This lack of restraint can be seen in many forms. A person might cheat because the temptation in the moment feels too strong to resist, without considering how it will affect their partner or the relationship in the long run. The rush of excitement or validation they feel is momentarily satisfying, but the consequences, the pain, guilt, and destruction left in its wake, are far more lasting and damaging. This impulsivity is often fueled by a deep-seated inability to manage emotions and desires in a healthy way. When faced with difficult emotions or situations that require patience, responsibility, or effort, a person with little self-discipline may resort to actions that offer instant relief even if it means betraying someone else's trust. They might give in to temptation, lie, or act selfishly, thinking that their needs or desires in the moment are more important than the well-being of others. Unfortunately, these momentary decisions can create irreversible damage to relationships and reputations. Furthermore, the lack of self-discipline often leads to a cycle of regret. After the impulsive act has been carried out, the person may feel remorse, but the damage is already done. They find themselves trapped in a pattern of self-destructive behavior, where their inability to control their impulses continues to cause harm to themselves and others. The key to breaking this cycle lies in developing the ability to think before acting, to weigh the consequences, and to practice restraint. Until that ability is cultivated, the pattern of hurt and betrayal will likely continue. Misalignment of values is a significant reason why people hurt others, often without even realizing it. When two individuals have fundamentally different beliefs, principles, or life goals, it can create a rift that leads to betrayal or cheating. These differences in values are not always obvious at first, but they slowly emerge over time as people's priorities and worldviews become clearer. When those values clash, one person may act in ways that are hurtful, often justifying their actions because they perceive the world differently than the person they are betraying. For instance, someone who values personal freedom above all else might see a committed relationship as something restrictive, rather than something that requires sacrifice and compromise. They may prioritize their own desires over the well-being of their partner, acting on impulses without fully understanding the consequences for the relationship. This misalignment doesn't always stem from malice or a lack of care for the other person, but rather from a difference in what they believe is important. The person who feels the hurt may see loyalty, trust, and commitment as sacred values, while the person causing the pain may view these things more casually or as secondary to their own desires. This misalignment can also occur when one person has evolved in their beliefs or understanding of the world, while the other has not. People change over time, and when one individual grows or shifts in their values, the relationship may no longer feel as aligned as it once did. One person might start to see the importance of honesty, emotional intimacy, or loyalty, while the other remains focused on personal gain or convenience. The result can be betrayal, where the person who has shifted their values feels neglected or deceived, while the person acting out doesn't understand why their actions are so damaging. The emotional pain from such a situation is profound, as it often feels like a violation of something fundamental. The person who is hurt may question their own values or self-worth, wondering why they weren't enough to keep the relationship intact. Meanwhile, the person who causes the pain might not even recognize the harm they've done, as their actions seemed perfectly reasonable to them based on their own values. Ultimately, the healing process involves recognizing and accepting that these value differences exist, and understanding that while they may not be easily reconciled, they can explain why the betrayal occurred. The key is to acknowledge that people's core beliefs and priorities shape their actions. And when those beliefs don't align, hurt is often inevitable. Unresolved past trauma is a powerful force that shapes how individuals behave in relationships, often leading them to hurt others unintentionally. People who have experienced significant emotional or psychological wounds in their past can carry these scars throughout their lives, and these unresolved issues can manifest in unhealthy ways, particularly when they find themselves in vulnerable or emotionally charged situations. They may not even realize that their past trauma is influencing their behavior, but the pain they have not fully dealt with creates patterns of hurtful actions. When someone hasn't healed from past trauma, they often bring that unresolved hurt into their current relationships. This can affect how they interact with others, causing them to react defensively, to sabotage connections, or to lash out in moments of stress or insecurity. For example, someone who has been cheated on in the past may, without realizing it, project their fears of betrayal onto their current partner, becoming overly suspicious or possessive. Alternatively, someone who has suffered emotional neglect or abuse may struggle with vulnerability or trust, and in an attempt to protect themselves, they might cheat or act out, fearing abandonment or rejection before it happens. These emotional wounds aren't always visible, and often they are buried so deep within a person's psyche that they don't surface until a triggering event occurs. When a person is confronted with a situation that reminds them of their past pain, they may unconsciously react from that place of hurt rather than from a place of rational thought. The result is behavior that appears to be irrational, cruel, or self-sabotaging. However, it is often a defensive mechanism that was learned as a way to survive past trauma. For example, someone who experienced neglect as a child may cheat because, deep down, they feel undeserving of love or afraid that they are unworthy of a healthy relationship. The tragedy of this kind of behavior is that the person inflicting pain is often not aware of the root cause of their actions. They are acting out of a fear that originates from the past, not from a desire to hurt the person in front of them. The healing process requires self-awareness, the willingness to face those painful memories, and the courage to seek help in order to move beyond the trauma. Only by addressing the wounds of the past can a person begin to break the cycle of hurtful behavior and rebuild healthier, more trusting relationships. Until then, their unresolved trauma will continue to influence their actions, often in destructive ways, causing them to hurt others unintentionally. A lack of empathy is one of the most damaging reasons why people hurt others, often without fully understanding or appreciating the emotional consequences of their actions. Empathy, the ability to put oneself in another's shoes and understand their emotions and experiences, is crucial for healthy relationships. When someone lacks this capacity, they are unable to grasp the depth of the pain they may cause by their words or actions. They might act selfishly or recklessly, without recognizing the emotional toll it takes on others, leading to betrayal, cheating, or other forms of hurt. At the core of this lack of empathy is an inability to connect with or consider the feelings of others. People who struggle with empathy may not intentionally set out to harm others, but their actions reflect a disregard for how their behavior affects those around them. This can result from a variety of factors such as emotional numbness, a lack of emotional intelligence, or simply an overwhelming focus on their own needs and desires. When someone is preoccupied with their own struggles, desires, or fears, they often fail to notice or care about how their actions impact others. For instance, a person might cheat because they are focused on their own pleasure or need for validation, without considering the heartbreak it will cause their partner. The absence of empathy can also manifest as an inability to recognize the gravity of a situation. A person who lacks empathy may lie or betray someone without understanding how deeply it will wound the other person. They might brush off the consequences, downplaying the emotional destruction caused by their actions. In extreme cases, they may even justify their behavior, convincing themselves that it was harmless or that the hurt they caused doesn't matter. This lack of understanding can be particularly damaging in relationships, as it creates a profound disconnect between the individuals involved. For the person on the receiving end of this behavior, the emotional consequences can be devastating. It can feel like the person who caused the pain doesn't care, or worse, that they don't value the relationship enough to consider the harm they've done. It can leave the victim questioning their worth, wondering how someone they trusted could be so indifferent to their suffering. The key to healing in these situations is fostering greater empathy, which requires self-awareness, emotional maturity, and a willingness to connect with others on a deeper level. Without empathy, the cycle of hurt and betrayal continues as individuals remain unaware or indifferent to the emotional consequences of their actions.